Ever since Ricciardo left Red Bull in 2018, they were having problems with their number 2 driver. Gasly and Albon did not match the expectation, forcing Red Bull to look outside their junior driver academy. So they signed Perez, and he performed decently well in the last 2 years. But this season, he has not been performing well at all. And let's have a look at the statistics behind that. Qualifying is not the strength of Perez. He is known to be the tyre whisperer, someone who is very handy in the Grand Prix on Sunday. So for a driver like Bottas, who was considered one of the good qualifiers in F1, qualified usually within 3/10 of Hamilton. So the expectations for Perez is that he should usually be within 7/10 of Verstappen. But Checo's qualifying performance has become worse through the years. This year, his qualifying performances have been even worse than Gasly and Albon. In half the races, he's qualifying more than 7/10 behind Verstappen. And usually when he has such bad qualifying performances, it becomes even more difficult for him to make up positions in the race and finish on the podium. So far this season, Perez finished on the podium 8 times, whereas Bottas finished on the podium 11 times in the dominant Mercedes 2020 and could have had more without bad luck. He had an amazing start to the season, but then his performance dropped off after the Monaco Grand Prix. In the last 12 races, Verstappen won 11 times, whereas Checo didn't even have a win and could only finish on the podium 4 times. Also, the gap between the two drivers has been massive, sometimes extending over 20 seconds, which is the duration of a pit stop. While Perez found himself ahead of Verstappen in the same strategy in some races, he could not maintain the lead and win those Grand Prix. And more recently, Checo has been involved in some crashes. And in the cost cap era, these crashes affect Red Bull as they will not be able to bring some upgrades to the car. He has 224 points this season, and going by his current form, he is expected to get 284 points, 21 less than what he managed last year, despite having a more dominant car and fewer DNFs. Though he is P2 in the Drivers' Championship now, he only has a gap of 30 points to Hamilton. And if Mercedes give Lewis a good car, he might end up finishing P2 ahead of Perez, which would be a massive shame for Checo. Next year, it seems that McLaren will likely challenge Red Bull for the championship. And Mercedes and Ferrari are also expected to close the gap to Red Bull as the car performance converge. If Perez performs like he is now, he will be a liability for the team. He will not be able to help Max in strategy, won't be able to get enough constructors' points to help the team. And that's why I think Perez will be kicked out of the team this year. And the first replacement that comes to mind is Lando Norris. Helmut Marko and Christian Horner have been flirting with him recently, and it makes sense. He has shown good performances in the McLaren for the past 3 years. He's a pretty consistent driver and he very rarely crashes. But right now, he is the team leader and number 1 driver at McLaren. So it seems pretty unlikely that he would leave that role and join Red Bull as their number 2 driver. Norris has stated his desire to win a championship with McLaren. And it seems likely that McLaren will give Norris his best ever car in F1 next year. So I think Norris would try to see out his McLaren contract next year and then decide on his future move. If Red Bull don't get Lando, they will get Daniel Ricciardo. I still think he's a pretty good driver despite his previous stint at McLaren. He has 8 wins without driving a championship winning car, which just shows how good he can be on his day. He also knows the Red Bull team pretty well after working with them for 5 years in the past. And he was also pretty close to Max in qualifying during their tenure as teammates. I don't think Daniel will perform any worse than Checo is doing at the moment. Given the career that Ricciardo had so far, I think he deserves at least one shot at winning the driver's title. So I hope Marco gives him the opportunity to drive for Red Bull next season. And that is my opinion on Checo's situation at Red Bull. If you enjoyed the video, please do like and comment and subscribe to the channel as I will be releasing more videos soon. Goodbye.